Madam Deputy Speaker, thank you so much. It's with great excitement that I rise to speak in this transport debate. I could go on all day, but I'll be well aware of your time limit requirements. I would say, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'd like to thank the Prime Minister for giving us the time to hold this debate. He has great passion for transport, as we've seen from his time as Mayor of London. I also want to place on record my thanks to the Transport Select Committee members, some of whom are here today, and also to the Department and to the Ministers, who always engage proactively with us, have accepted many of our recommendations, and we continue to look forward to scrutinising them, but also coming up with the policy ideas that we think can make transport better. Because it does matter, Madam Deputy Speaker. This is the one department, the one policy area where pretty much every single person in this country and every single day is impacted by transport, and that's why I'm so excited to speak about some of the measures. So a quick canter through some of the modes, and then I want to talk a little about decarbonisation on each sector as well. This week we heard from the bus industry, or indeed representatives from local government. As has been said, the bus service improvement plan, the bids that went in, 31 of the 79 bids were successful. I know there's been some criticism that surely all local transport authorities should have funds, but I do believe this needs to be a competitive process where only the best ideas are funded, so that the best then gets taken on board by the other local transport authorities that perhaps aren't being given the money but can learn as to how it can be well spent. So I do think the lessons there are that local transport authorities, indeed county halls across the country, need to be aware that these bids, not just for transport, are going to continue to come through, and they need to have bidding departments that are successful in being able to bid, not just having the specialists. On rail, I really welcome the legislation which is forthcoming for Great British Railways. I think we have been concerned as a committee that those that have their train set in the Department for Transport don't particularly want to give it away to the mix of the public and private sector who will be taking it on board on an arm's length basis. I'd like to see the rail sector on the private side of things being given the opportunity to remain involved. It's the private side of the rail sector over the previous 20 years that have doubled rail passenger numbers. We need that type of attitude more now than ever, given the issues from the pandemic. I recognise and welcome the £96 billion worth of integrated rail plan funding. I think it always must be frustrating for the Minister to then hear someone say that and then demand more. But I would like us to look particularly at the station opportunities at Manchester, at Bradford, and indeed certainly at Leeds, where it does seem to be full on capacity. And also, as was made clear by the Mayor of the West Midlands, the Midlands Rail Hub will actually allow all of the new track that will be put in place to really be shared across the wider region in terms of growth. So I really welcome the Minister's commitment to continue to listen and involve that project where we can. On aviation, Madam Deputy Speaker, we must learn the lessons from the pandemic. We must have future-proofing so that if there is another variant of concern, then we know how to react and we don't perhaps disproportionately impact the aviation sector as we did, I would argue, previously. We also need help for the sector to recover. That means more flexibility on staffing, particularly security staff, so that they can be vetted and perhaps do some of their training as they go. On aircraft modernisation, the airspace modernisation, really need to see that deliver both for decarbonisation and getting more planes in the space. Heathrow landing charges, I hear the Minister that it's a matter for the independent regulator, but can ministers ensure that they are testing those numbers, because the industry, the aviation industry, say that the flights will be much greater than Heathrow are saying will be the case. And of course, the lower the numbers for Heathrow, the higher the costs, the more justification for putting up the landing charges. That would really hold us all back. And also slot allocation reform. As we've left the EU, we can surely do more now. And can we please, can we please have the airline insolvency review? I think I've stood here so many times calling for this. We keep talking about it. We don't deliver it. It shouldn't be the case that the CAA is the body that's repatriating customers stranded. I give way.
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend for giving way, and he does an excellent job in chairing the Transport Select Committee. I just wanted to ask him what he is doing to ensure that the road building projects that we secure for our constituencies, and we've secured over £50 million for the completion of the North West Relief Road in Shrewsbury, is still stuck in the planning process. Some of us are finding the planning process very laborious and complex. Is his select committee interacting with government to try to ensure that planning processes for the construction of roads are speeded up?
My honourable friend makes an excellent point. And on road, of course, we've got the £24.5 billion RIS2 programme that we're halfway through. My call, I think it probably aligns to his, is that that's closely monitored. And for those projects that are going to be held up, then the shovel-ready projects that would have perhaps been in RIS3 can actually be put inside RIS2. And I think there's issues around the A303 on that front. So, yes, as a committee, we are actually pledged to look at that. And indeed, he takes me on to roads. I'm also really keen that on smart motorways we continue with that audit to ensure that those roads are safer with some of the retrospective fittings that perhaps should have been in there in the first place. Again, I recognise the department's commitment on that front. And in the bill, can we have time for pavement parking to be prohibited outside London? It's worked in London since the early 70s. It's time to take it elsewhere. On active travel, 50% of all journeys will need to be in urban centres will need to be conducted via active travel by 2030 if we hit our target. Can we embrace the change, technology and innovation? I know some will speak about e-scooters and say that more needs to be done to tackle them. Personally speaking, they're out there, and at the moment they are illegal. Nothing seems to stop. Better to actually regulate them and actually control them, make them better, than pretend that they don't exist. How is it I can buy a bike, I can buy a car, but I can only actually hire an e-scooter? Surely it's time to catch up with science. On decarbonisation, very briefly, Madam Deputy Speaker, I welcome the commitment to 4,000 zero-emission buses. I know that 2,000 have been funded, but I believe that there are not enough on the road right now, so we do need to do more to get those delivered. Not least, it really helps our manufacturing sector. They're unique to this country. On rail, we have 37% of our track electrified, but there's another 6,100 miles to go. Yes, we need to look at hydrogen, biomode, but electrification at the moment is the only game in town. If we had a rolling programme in place, then we'd perhaps be able to deliver it cheaper than the 2.5 million per mile it currently costs us. In Germany, they've got a rolling programme, it costs £500,000. So the more we do, the cheaper it becomes. On aviation, we need to back a winner. Sustainable aviation fuel is that winner. It needs a mandate and it also needs a contract for difference market which has delivered for electricity, and the government can really do more on that front. And on maritime, as well as protecting seafarers, and I do think we need to look at the insolvency legislation with regard to employment rights all over again, we also know that there are moves with the European Union on biometric testing which will absolutely hammer our ports and our short supply chain routes if we don't do more. And finally, on road, Madam Deputy Speaker, I welcome the 2030 target, but it's going to be incredibly difficult to meet if we don't get more people buying electric vehicles. The zero-emission vehicle mandate is a great idea, but it only comes into force in 2025. We only have 6.6% of new cars sold that are electric. The second-hand car market is 0.3%. These may be previous year's figures. We are doing a lot more. Range anxiety will actually get less as the government invests more in smart charging as it's doing so, and we have interoperability. But I'm really worried about delivering for those people, particularly the third of all households that don't have charging at home. And once all this is done, Madam Deputy Speaker, there will be a 4% hole in the exchequer. 4% of all tax receipts come from fuel duty or vehicle excise duty. That is £35 billion worth of funds. Only about 20% of that goes onto the road. So if we want to continue to invest in roads, but also schools, hospitals, we're going to have to find a way of replacing those taxes that won't exist once we all have electric vehicles. It's time for road pricing. Road pricing will work. We have the technology to allow it to work. And the beauty of it is that it's very similar to the current system. The more you drive, the bigger your vehicle, the more you would then pay. It's time to have bold decisions on matters like this and not wait until it's too late. And I know that this government is all about bold decisions and will work very closely with that regard.